And so you're really big on patient education. And how do you get a patient to understand that treatment's necessary or would be an advantage to them and get them to a yes? How do you do that? How do you use technology to do that? What is your method?
That's a great question. I'm a big believer in patient education. I think that in order for patients a lot of times to say yes to treatment, they have to understand the value of what we're providing them. And a lot of times with new patients, you don't necessarily have the trust that you need to be able to really execute that case, right? We know we can do it, but the patient doesn't necessarily know, right? So how can we help build that relationship and build that confidence? And technology is a big way that we do that. Technology gives us the ability to show patients their teeth. I'm a huge believer in patients seeing their teeth. They're having a problem. Let me show you what that problem looks like in your mouth. Let's talk about how we got there,
Right.
perhaps, and then how we can treat it to make sure that we can keep it from getting worse
Right.
and maybe eliminate that problem altogether in your mouth. So,
Absolutely.
technology allows us to show patients what's happening in their mouth. It's up to us as dentists to be able to communicate that clearly in what we would call layman's terms, right? So that the patient doesn't feel left behind.
Right.
And that's a bit of a skill that it's taken time for me to develop.
Absolutely.
But once you get there, I think patients really appreciate the fact that you're communicating with them. They feel like they're part of the process.
Right.
And a lot of times I feel like once you get to that point, they're far more ready to say yes to the treatment
Right.
than they were before.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're really bringing them along for that journey and also putting that back, that power back in their hands for caring for themselves. Would you say that there's one piece of technology that really has made that process significantly easier for you?
I think the intraoral scanner, I mean, first of all technology gives you the ability to do this, right? But the intraoral scanner is the one that I think, first of all, is the first piece of technology that most practices look to implement. And it's the one that I think can be utilized in many different areas of the practice. So for instance, as a restorative dentist, I obviously use an intraoral scanner for taking impressions for treatment and things like that. Our hygiene team also uses the scanner every day on almost every patient.
Amazing.
To be able to track changes in recession or wear or things like that. We're big proponents of showing patients their teeth.
Right.
And, patients don't know what's happening in their mouth. And so it's our job as dentists to educate them on what is happening and help them once again to understand the value of the treatment that we're offering.
Amazing. You're a cosmetic dentist, which you would identify as that.
For sure.
Do you have a particular case in mind that was really transformative, where you were able to use this process with technology and really bring the patient along with just an incredible result?
You keep saying bring the patient along, and that's a huge part of it is communicating with the patient.
Right.
I haven't touched on that yet, but I do want to speak to that
Please
a
do.
little bit. Patients come to us and as a new patient, they don't necessarily know us at all. We're completely new to each other.
Right.
So how do you build trust in that relationship? And so one of the reasons that I really love this particular case is because this was a patient who was new to me, and she had a pretty nice smile, young woman, but there were some small changes that we could make that I felt would make a big difference. And so it was a matter of over time, just talking about what was happening in her mouth. And this didn't happen over one visit. This happened over, each recall she would come back and we'd talk a little bit about it and we'd plant the seed. And then the next time we'd discuss it a little bit. And it was this building confidence in, is this going to be the right thing for me? That really helped to kind of get her over the line in seeking that treatment. And then to be able to use technology to help her visualize what that final result could look like was kind of the last piece that she needed to be able to say, all right, this could really, really help, my self-image, the way that, the way my smile looks, things like that. And so that in particular was one case that I really liked.
Incredible. And you probably see so many of those. So it's really, what an incredible profession this is.
Absolutely. And for those cases where small changes can make a big difference, sometimes it can be a little harder to communicate that.
Sure.
But finding the language to really connect with patients, I find is a skill, and it's a lot of that's made easier in many ways by having the visuals that the technology gives.
Right. Okay, so this is our lightning round question here. What trends are you seeing in cosmetic dentistry right now?
For sure, we're moving, and rightly so, to being more minimally invasive, right? And there are a lot of ways that the technology allows us to do that.
Right.
Once again, we can take an intraoral scan, we can do a digital wax up, we can look at that wax up and see, in order to get to this perfect position of the teeth, do we need to move the teeth? How much preparation are we going to need? Right? And that really is a big part of the education process, because patients don't want their teeth drilled on by and large, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can utilize the technology to be more minimally invasive and reassure the patients that we can get to this result without grinding all their teeth away, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody's really concerned about that, rightly so.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's the trend, is being more minimally invasive to do cosmetic cases.
Incredible. I really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you
Pleasure.
for joining the Schein Chat, and I hope you really, really enjoy Thrive Live.